Migration, a word that stirs emotions, divides opinions, and changes the world. It's a phenomenon that's shaped civilizations, but has also brought conflicts. What is truth and what is merely a myth? How does immigration impact our future? Prepare for a journey through history and the present, from the Crusades to modern America, from slavery to mass immigration. How did immigrants turn the United States into a global superpower? Why is Europe struggling in the face of a new wave of immigration? You will witness stories of courage and division. We will explore how Donald Trump built a wall, not only on the border, but also between worldviews. We will look at Australia, which proved that strict rules can work. And we will focus on Europe, where a single decision by Angela Merkel changed an entire continent. Is migration a threat or an opportunity? What is the real impact on the economy, culture, and security? We will seek answers where myths collide with facts. This is not just a documentary, this is a call to reflection. Myths and facts will draw you into a story that is timely as it is controversial. Are you ready? The mysteries and facts, conspiracies, myths, facts, and the truth they don't want you to know. What stories have been hidden from you? What events have shaped our past and present? The Mysteries and Facts is not just a show full of documentaries, it's a path to uncovering the truth that is unfolding right before our eyes. Migration is as old as humanity itself. People have always moved. Some sought new resources and better conditions, while others fled conflicts and natural disasters. This need for movement has shaped the world. It has shaped us. History shows that every relocation brings challenges. When people meet, it creates opportunities for cooperation, but also conflict. It's not just about space or resources, it's about values, culture, and language. Every newcomer brings something new, but also encounters the old. Take, for example, the Ming Dynasty, a time when China stood at the peak of its glory. It's the 15th century. On the throne sits Emperor Yongle, a ruler whose ambitions knew no bounds. Under his command, the seas became a path to wealth and prestige. Admiral Zhang, he led grand expeditions, massive fleets sailing as far as East Africa. Every ship was a symbol of Chinese power. Every sail was proof of openness to the world. But then Yongle died, and with him, the dream of conquering the oceans died too. His successor, Emperor Hongqi, made a decision that shocked the entire court. He canceled further voyages. The ships that once ruled the oceans were condemned to ruin. And when a new order came to burn them, flames consumed the symbols of Chinese power. But that wasn't all. He banned the construction of any ship with more than 2 masts. All plans, maps, and records of the great voyages were destroyed. The entire art of maritime exploration was erased from the nation's memory so that no one could ever lead such expeditions again. Why? To protect Chinese culture from foreign influences, to strengthen Confucian values, to prevent the empire from succumbing to the influence of outside powers. It was a drastic step, but effective. China closed itself off, it focused on its own borders and on its own identity. History is full of similar examples. Whenever people arrive, they bring change. Sometimes welcomed, other times feared. The question always remains, what is the risk? What is the enrichment? Where is the line between acceptance and protection? Today, we face the same questions. Europe and America are both under migration pressures that are testing their ability to protect their values, culture, and stability. These dilemmas are not new. History can be our guide if we are willing to learn from it. Migration is an inseparable part of human history. Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization, was for centuries a destination for waves of migration. People brought new techniques, ideas, and traditions, shaping the prosperity of the region. And now Rome, an empire that dominated the ancient world and became a symbol of power and prosperity. Rome conquered new territories and brought slaves from them, an indispensable workforce that built its roads, which we still walk today, monumental aqueducts that brought water to cities, and grand amphitheaters that we still envision as symbols of its glory. Without the influx of people from conquered lands, the monuments that continue to awe us would have never been created, and Rome would have never reached its peak. Migration was neither random nor uncontrolled. It was a precisely managed part of the strategy for expansion and prosperity. The brilliance of Rome would never have illuminated the world without this system. The modern era brought a new story, a story that changed the history of both sides of the Atlantic. In the 17th and 18th centuries, traders and colonial powers decided to use migration as a tool of power. Thus began the transatlantic slave trade, one of the most tragic chapters in human history. From regions now known as Nigeria, Angola, Ghana, and Congo, approximately 12 million men, women, and children were taken from their homes and transported in chains across the ocean. Historians estimate that up to 2 million people died during the voyage due to disease, hunger, and inhumane conditions. Those who survived landed on an unknown continent, stripped of hope and freedom. They were forced to work on plantations of sugarcane, cotton, and tobacco, contributing to the wealth of the European powers that never saw them as people, but as tools of profit. Yet, out of this suffering emerged strength. The African American community, born from this bloody history, became a cornerstone of American culture. From their pain rose jazz, blues, and an unbreakable fight for civil rights. Their story is not just one of oppression, but a symbol of human resilience and the courage to transform suffering into hope and legacy for future generations. Every blues chord, every story of freedom, every civil rights movement reminds us that the journey across the ocean, which began in shackles, became a story of freedom and pride. History teaches us that migration can be a source of growth, but also of suffering. What matters is how it's managed. When human movement is part of a vision and guided by reason, it can bring development and progress. But without order and purpose, it can erode the foundations of society like a tidal wave that crashes onto unprepared shores. Today, as the world crosses borders faster than ever before, both Europe and America face the same question. How can we turn the movement of people into a story of building, not disintegration? The past shows us the way if we are ready to listen, and if we can recognize in time the signs that warn us of our downfall. Let's move to present day. Since 2015, Europe has been facing a migration crisis of unprecedented scale, which in many ways persists and has even worsened. During that year, more than 1.3 million people, mostly from the Middle East, Africa, and South Asia, applied for asylum. The motivations of the migrants varied. Some fled war-torn regions, while others sought economic opportunities. The result? Europe was confronted with challenges it was unprepared for. The statistics speak clearly. The highest number of asylum seekers headed to Germany. By 2021, migrants made up nearly 10% of the population in Western European countries. However, in some regions, the unemployment rate among migrants exceeded 30%, leading to rising tensions and deepening frustration among residents. In addition to economic impacts, cultural differences have led to unexpected clashes. Migrants often come from backgrounds with different values and traditions, sparking conflicts over issues such as women's rights, religion, and freedom of speech. In Sweden, for example, riots erupted in 2022 after demonstrators burned copies of the Quran. These incidents provoked violent reactions and revealed deep tensions between immigrant communities and local residents. However, Europe is not unified in its approach to resolving this crisis. While countries like Hungary and Poland have adopted strict measures to protect their borders, nations like Germany and Sweden have taken a more open approach, which has strained their social system. The differing strategies of individual countries make it difficult to find a unified solution at the European Union level. Europe faces a crucial question. How can migration remain a benefit and not become a cause of destabilization? Without clear rules and a common strategy, Europe risks not only losing economic stability, but also the disintegration of its identity and values. Without a shared approach, chaos could undermine the very foundations of European civilization. Today's world calls for responsibility. History reminds us that only those civilizations that can adapt and also protect what is important to them will survive. Time is running out for Europe. The question is whether it can respond before it's too late. While Europe struggles with the consequences of the migration crisis and searches for a way to maintain control over its values and stability, let's cross the ocean to a country born from immigration. America, the symbol of opportunity and determination, has stories in its history that prove that the United States, a land of dreams turned to reality, has demonstrated that migration is not just the movement of people, but also a driving force for progress. Yet every story has two sides. Between 1820 and 1930, more than 33 million immigrants arrived in America. Irish, Germans, Italians, Jews, each group sought a fresh start. But the road to success was not easy. In the 1840s, Ireland was shrouded in the shadow of famine. The Great Hunger devastated the country and drove thousands of desperate men, women, and children across the stormy Atlantic. America, the land of hope, became their destination. But instead of a warm welcome, they encountered suspicion, fear, and hostility. The Irish, exhausted and poor, were blamed for the rising crime rates. Some Americans saw them as a cause of social chaos. They were different. They were poor Catholics in a predominantly Protestant nation. This difference fueled prejudice, yet they persevered. They settled in major cities like New York and Boston, forming tight-knit communities. They preserved their culture and began to reshape the reality around them. They became laborers, police officers, and politicians. These unwanted newcomers became one of the pillars upon which the new America was built. Their story is proof that even the most marginalized groups can change the world if they persevere, if they hold on to their pride and their desire for a better life. Immigrants from many nations built railroads, expanded factories, and created thriving cities. German engineers brought new technologies. John Augustus Roebling, a German engineer and visionary, arrived in America in 1831 with a mind full of dreams and knowledge that would change the world. He pioneered suspension bridges, a man who tamed steel and used cables to create the backbone of the future. His brilliant design became the foundation for the Brooklyn Bridge, an iconic structure that connected Manhattan to Brooklyn and forever transformed the New York skyline. Another German genius, Charles Proteus Steinmetz, crossed the ocean half a century later. He brought not only his name to America, but also groundbreaking ideas about alternating current. As a scientist at General Electric, he developed models that revolutionized how the world uses electricity. Without him, the electric grids we know today would have remained a mere dream. The Irish also left an indelible mark on the history of the United States, not only through their hard work in building infrastructure, but also through their talent and visions that shaped iconic structures. In 1792, James Hoban, a talented architect from Ireland, won the competition to design the White House and became the chief architect of this iconic residence of the American president. Without him, the symbol of power and hope of the United States would have never gained its majestic form. Hoban not only designed the building, but personally oversaw its construction, and later led the reconstruction after the British attack in 1814 set it ablaze. His work is a testament that the Irish and American didn't just build roads and bridges, they contributed to the very heart of the American Republic. Italian craftsmen brought cities to life. St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York, Union Station, Washington, D.C., and many other iconic buildings across the United States bear the hallmark of Italian craftsmanship. These skilled artists and workers brought with them expertise passed down through generations in the Old World and etched it into the new land across the ocean. Their hands, hardened by centuries of tradition, were capable of transforming cold marble and stone into something vibrant, something that connects the past with the future. St. Patrick's Cathedral stands tall as a symbol of faith and beauty, carrying the Gothic grandeur of European cathedrals into the bustling heart of New York. Union Station, with its marble floors and ornate arches, recalls Roman triumphal structures and welcomes travelers as grandly as if they were emperors. And not just these two buildings, but many other monuments, from ornate public libraries to grand theaters, serve as bridges between continents, between the traditions of old Europe and the energy of the New World. Italian artisans not only beautified America, but also infused it with echoes of their ancient homeland, leaving behind a legacy admired by generations. But America was not spared from conflict. In 1882, the Chinese Exclusion Act came into effect, marking a turning point in the country's immigration policy. For the first time in U.S. history, Congress declared that a specific group of people had no right to enter the land of dreams and hopes. Chinese laborers, exhausted and worn out from hard work, were not seen as symbols of determination and diligence. Instead, they became targets of distrust, prejudice, and fear. The fear of difference and growing economic competition gnawed at American society. Chinese immigrants accepted work for lower wages, which, in the eyes of many Americans, posed a threat to their livelihoods. However, that was only part of the truth. Deep-seated prejudice against the other ran deep, making Chinese immigrants victims of discrimination, not only in the workplace, but also in everyday life. And yet, the irony of fate, it was these very undesirables who played a crucial role in building the modern empire. It was the Chinese laborers who, with their blood and sweat, carved the path of the transcontinental railroad that connected America's two coasts and unlocked new opportunities for the nation's economic expansion. Without them, America would not have gained its lifeline that linked the East to the West. But the law that sought to silence and erase them persisted for decades. The Chinese Exclusion Act was not repealed until 1943, almost 60 years after its enactment, and only due to geopolitical interests during World War II, when China became an ally of the United States against fascism. The law, rooted in distrust and fear, remains a dark reminder of how fragile the balance of hope and hatred can be. For generations, immigration has shaped the face of America, but each new wave has brought new challenges. Today, the southern border is under immense pressure. Millions of people are crossing legally and illegally. The social system is overwhelmed. Smuggling networks exploit the chaos, and many cities are experiencing a rise in crime. A nation that once symbolized freedom and order now stands at the edge of an abyss. Citizens are asking, can America remain the land of opportunity if its borders cease to function? Waiting is no longer an option. The time for decisive action has come. The challenge that the United States now faces begins to mirror the situation in Europe, which continues to struggle under the influx of refugees from the Middle East and North Africa. Both sides of the Atlantic face similar problems: overcrowded shelters, disputes over solutions, and growing voices calling for change. But while Europe hesitates and searches for a new way forward, American citizens made a choice in the elections to support action. They elected a leader who promised not only to protect borders, but to defend American values. And while this approach may lead to difficult decisions in the future, one undeniable truth remains. This is the choice of the American people. Their vote sealed a commitment to act instead of waiting for tomorrow to decide their fate. The new president brings a clear vision. Protecting borders is not isolation, but a necessary step to safeguard security and stability. The United States of America, a nation of immigrants whose story intertwines with the stories of those who came seeking freedom and a new beginning. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, proclaims the inscription at the base of the Statue of Liberty. This idealism shaped the American dream, where migration fueled innovation and prosperity. But times are changing. In 2022, over 2 million people crossed the southern border of the United States. Many fled poverty, while others entered illegally with no plans for integration or contribution to the economy. American resources and security were under pressures that could no longer be ignored. Donald Trump, a name that evokes passionate emotions. To some, a hero. To others, a controversial figure. Yet, in the matter of migration, he achieved something no one else had done before. He transformed the concerns of millions of Americans into action. Trump was not just a politician. He was a leader who had the courage to act, even at the cost of sharp criticism. His most prominent move was the construction of the border wall with Mexico. It wasn't just a physical structure, it was a symbol of determination. "Without borders, there is no nation," he declared in 2017. These words resonated with his supporters, who saw uncontrolled migration as a direct threat to American economy, security, and culture. History offers many examples of great powers building barriers to protect their values and way of life. The Great Wall of China, which began construction in the 3rd century BC and reached its peak during the Ming Dynasty in the 14th and 15th centuries, was a response to the relentless raids of nomadic tribes. This colossal structure, stretching over 21,000 kilometers, protected Chinese territory from invasions from Mongolia and Central Asia. It was not only a physical defense, but also a symbol of pride and a safeguard of cultural identity. Hadrian's Wall in Britain, built in the 2nd century, served a similar purpose. Roman emperors understood that protecting borders was not just about military strategy. It was about maintaining order, peace, and the Roman way of life. These structures sent a message: chaos ends here. Order begins here. Trump's wall on the southern border held the same significance. It was a response to concerns over uncontrolled migration. The 3,145-kilometer-long border became a political battleground. The Trump administration constructed or renovated over 720 kilometers of barriers, despite fierce opposition from political rivals, media scrutiny, and legal challenges. However, Trump's strategy was not solely about building a wall. He also implemented the Remain in Mexico program, which required asylum seekers to wait outside the U.S. territory while their claims were processed. While critics condemned these measures as inhumane, his supporters saw them as necessary steps to prevent abuse of the asylum system. Statistics indicate that his policies had a measurable impact. The number of illegal border crossings dropped by more than 50% between 2019 and 2020. Public opinion remained divided. Over 55% of Americans supported strengthening border security, while 45% criticized Trump's rhetoric as too harsh. Nevertheless, his clear message of America First resonated. His voters knew what to expect: a solid plan and decisive actions. Trump's immigration plan is not solely about borders. It's about the future of a nation synonymous with freedom and opportunity, enhancing security infrastructure, implementing advanced surveillance technologies, expediting asylum procedures, and increasing border patrols by an additional 10,000 officers. All these measures share a clear goal: to protect American families and maintain the system's stability. According to data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, uncontrolled migration has led to a decrease in average wages in low-income sectors by up to 8%. Illegal labor puts pressure on the job market and threatens workers with lower education levels. On the other hand, legal, regulated migration can be a benefit. Experts, scientists, and investors from around the world bring innovation and help the economy grow. The key difference lies in control and regulation. Without a clear plan, there is risk that smuggling networks will gain even more influence. What happens if border defense collapses? Who will bear the responsibility when chaos engulfs American cities? The United States has always been a beacon of hope. The world has looked to it as an example of freedom, opportunity, and order. Yet this role is not a given. It must be protected. Trump's border strengthening policy is about more than just security. It's about defending the American dream. The question we must ask ourselves is, can America remain the land of opportunity if it does not defend what defines it? Each of us must answer that question for ourselves. But history teaches us that great nations do not lose their values because they are conquered. They lose them when they choose not to defend them. After World War II, when the horrors of the Holocaust revealed the devastating consequences of persecution and hatred, Israel emerged as a response to the call for a safe home for survivors left without refuge. In 1948, a nation was born, not only as a sanctuary, but as a symbol of renewal and determination. Israel faced a daunting challenge: building a prosperous society on barren land, without infrastructure and surrounded by enemies. Between 1948 and 1951, over 700,000 immigrants from various parts of the world, Europe, the Middle East, North Africa, and the Soviet Union, arrived in Israel. They came with minimal possessions, but immense hope for a new beginning. Despite differences in culture, language, and traditions, all these groups were unified by their belief in a shared future. In 1950, Israel passed the Law of Return, which granted automatic citizenship to all Jews arriving from abroad. This step ensured that new arrivals were welcomed not as foreigners, but as full members of the nation. This access to education, healthcare, and employment accelerated their integration and strengthened the cohesion of society. New residents brought labor, skills, and innovation. In collective farming communities known as kibbutzim, they shared knowledge and collaborated to build the new state. Within a few decades, Israel became a technological powerhouse. More than 40% of the founders of Israel's tech companies come from immigrant families. What was once inhospitable land has become a nation renowned for its startups, medicine, and defense technology. The massive influx of people brought not only growth, but also challenges. Israel quickly understood that security threats from neighboring states could jeopardize its progress. In 2013, a barrier along the Sinai Desert border was completed, reducing illegal crossings from thousands to mere dozens annually. A combination of physical barriers, surveillance technology, and strict border protection demonstrated to the world that controlling borders is not a sign of isolation, but a vital element of survival. Israel's approach shows that migration can be beneficial when managed with courage and clear vision. Israel may not be a perfect state free from conflict, but it proves that managed migration need not be a threat. It can be a driver of progress when it is part of a well-thought-out strategy. The question remains whether the world, facing its own crises, can muster the same courage and turn vision into reality. Australia has become an example of a nation that refused to passively witness the chaos of illegal migration. In 2013, it launched Operation Sovereign Borders, a strict program designed not only to protect its borders, but to also prevent smuggling networks from controlling the fate of migrants. This model has proven to be an effective response to a question faced by both America and Europe today. Who controls migration? The state or criminal organizations? Australian waters had long been a target for boats filled with people fleeing war, poverty, or seeking a new life. Between 2008 and 2013, nearly 50,000 illegal immigrants arrived at Australia's shores on more than 800 boats. Tragedies at sea were frequent. Hundreds of people died attempting to cross the ocean. The Australian government chose to act. Boats carrying migrants were turned back at sea and sent back to their points of origin. Asylum seekers were placed in offshore detention centers, most notably on the island of Nauru and Manus in Papua New Guinea. This approach drew international criticism, but Australia had a clear argument. We save lives by discouraging people from dangerous voyages. And the numbers speak for themselves. After the introduction of Operation Sovereign Borders, the number of boats dropped to nearly zero. This system did not mean Australia closed itself off to the world. In parallel with this policy, Australia implemented a points-based immigration system, a mechanism that prioritizes immigrants with high qualifications, language proficiency, and the potential for rapid integration. The country thus allows legal migration that supports its economy. As a result, more than 70% of migrants living in Australia are skilled professionals and entrepreneurs. The Australian model demonstrates that border control does not mean refusing to help. It means that the state sets the rules, not smugglers or migration crises. Today, Australia ranks among countries with the highest integration success rates, low unemployment among migrants, and a stable social system. The sea journeys to Australia, once undertaken by hundreds of migrants, mirror today's situation in the Mediterranean. Australia proves that strict rules can halt chaos and return control over borders to nations. Trump's policy of building a border wall and tightening the immigration process follows the same logic, a proven approach that delivered real results. This model is not only an inspiration for the United States, but also offers a fully applicable solution for Europe, which now faces similar challenges in protecting its borders. Angela Merkel, once the unwavering leader of Europe, opened the gates to more than 1 million refugees with her 2015 decision. Her famous declaration, "Wir schaffen das," we can do this, went down in history. But behind these words lies a story that's not so simple. It's not just about a humanitarian crisis, but also about systematic silencing of uncomfortable truths. New Year's Eve in Cologne in 2016 became a turning point. Hundreds of women reported sexual harassment, yet the media initially reported it hesitantly. Only under public pressure did it come to light that most of the perpetrators were migrants from North Africa and the Middle East. This event shook public trust in the media and government policies. Why did it take so long for the truth to come out?
Suddenly we were surrounded by a group of between 20 and 30 men. They were full of anger, and we had to make sure that no one of us was pulled away by them, and we were trying to get away as quickly as possible.
Similar incidences are not isolated cases. In Sweden, where crime rates have surged dramatically since 2015, reports often refer to youths or groups of men without specifying their nationality. The public has a right to know who is committing these crimes and why this information is being withheld. This is a question that more and more Europeans are asking. Migration. Throngs of young men with backpacks trekking across continents with a single goal: to reach Europe. The media presents stories of despair and the search for hope, appealing to compassion and solidarity. But what if the reality is different? What if these never-ending waves of migrants are driven by forces pursuing their own interests, hidden from the public eye? Migration has become a vast industry. From refugee camps to transportation companies to humanitarian organizations, the flow of refugees generates billions. Nonprofit organizations provide food, medicine, and shelter. But who funds these activities? And what if the charitable veil conceals political tools? One of the most influential figures in the global support of migration is George Soros. His Open Society Foundation's network has funded dozens of nonprofit organizations across Europe. Some have been directly accused of supporting illegal immigration and undermining national security policies. Is this mere conspiracy or evidence that money can shape the course of history? In 2015, George Soros published an article titled "Why Europe Must Accept Its Refugees," in which he emphasized that Europe should take greater responsibility and accept refugees in the name of humanity. His support for open borders and the acceptance of refugees is well documented, as are the debates about potential consequences and motivations behind these activities. That same year, Soros criticized Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban's approach to the migration crisis. In his article, Rebuilding the Asylum System, he wrote, "Orban's plan subordinates the human rights of asylum seekers and migrants to border security, threatening to divide and destroy the EU by forsaking the values it was built on and breaking the laws that should govern it." These statements illustrate Soros' vision of protecting refugees as a necessary step for preserving European values, but also fuel debates about whether this policy undermines the stability of nation states. Soros himself has openly spoken about his belief in open borders and the acceptance of refugees for the sake of humanity. But how far do these values extend? And who ensures that they do not become tools of geopolitical influence? In 2015, when Europe faced a wave of migration, Soros proposed a plan to accept up to 1 million migrants annually. His foundation also funded organizations that assisted migrants crossing the Mediterranean Sea. And at this point, the question arises, who is truly directing the flow of people, and who benefits from it? The manipulation of population movements is not a new strategy. The Ottoman Empire relocated entire nations to break local resistance. The Soviet Union used forced migrations to change the ethnic composition of regions and consolidate its power. Population movements have always been a tool for controlling territories. Could today's global migration crisis function in a similar way? The debate on migration has long exceeded the realm of mere numbers and statistics. It now touches upon the very essence of the rule of law. Does Europe have a right to change the rules for granting citizenship and limit privileges that were granted in the past? Proponents of such changes argue that citizenship should be a reward for following the rules, not for circumventing them. Critics warn that retrospective adjustments could weaken legal stability and create a sense of insecurity. Asylum systems were designed as a shield for people fleeing war. However, if they become overwhelmed by abuse, they lose their purpose and credibility. One proposed solution is mandatory waiting for asylum decisions outside EU member states. Proponents argue that this measure could prevent chaos and ensure fair evaluation of applications. Critics, on the other hand, caution that it could hinder access to legal protection and worsen humanitarian conditions. Europe faces a dilemma: how to protect those in need while preventing system abuse. It is no surprise, then, that a louder call for change echoes across the continent. Thousands of people are realizing that security, stability, and the preservation of traditions are not a given, but values that need to be actively defended. This call is not just a quiet whisper. It's a voice that resonates in election results and reshapes the political landscape. Fidesz, Hungary. Strong border defense. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán has demonstrated that border protection is not an empty political slogan, but a clear strategy backed by action. When the 2015 migration wave shook Europe, Hungary built barriers along its southern border, reducing illegal crossings by more than 99%. Where others hesitated, Hungary acted, and the results were immediate. These measures brought stability without requiring extensive militarization. Orbán's government showed that strict measures can work without abandoning respect for the law. It wasn't about closing the country. It was about ensuring control over who enters and under what conditions. Law and Justice, Poland. Uncompromising protection. Poland, led by the Law and Justice Party, PIS, bases its migration policy on principles of national sovereignty and security. They rejected mandatory migrant redistribution quotas imposed by the European Commission and instead invested in securing their borders. Moreover, PIS supports a policy that gives the state the right to decide who receives citizenship and under what conditions. This approach aims to ensure that the rules align with the needs of society, not external demands. Poland is sending a clear message: security and sovereignty are not up for negotiation. National Rally, France. Regaining control. Marine Le Pen and her National Rally have long advocated for the idea that France must have full control over its borders. Their proposals include a thorough screening of asylum seekers to ensure that aid is provided only to genuine refugees. Le Pen also supports measures that involve temporary waiting for asylum decisions outside French territory. Similar to policies in the United States, this approach aims to prevent system abuse. The National Rally argues that without a clear strategy, the country risks further weakening public trust. Alternative for Germany, AfD, Order and Justice. For AfD, the issue of migration is not just a humanitarian question. It is viewed as a matter of national security. Their plan includes strengthening the prevention of illegal entries directly at the borders and implementing strict rules to ensure a fair but transparent process. AFD emphasizes that border protection is not about isolation, but about ensuring order and respect for the rules. They support a model where legal migration is encouraged only when it brings a genuine benefit to society. Shared goals, a clear vision. These political movements did not arise from populism, but as a response to the demands of people who feel a loss of security and stability. Their goal is not to deter, but to create a system where clear rules guarantee order and safety for citizens. Across Europe, a new era is forming, an era that emphasizes strong leadership, accountability, and the protection of traditions and the future. The question is not whether Europe needs change. The question is whether we are ready to support those who believe that the future must be safeguarded by firm rules, not chaotic compromises. Europe stands at a crossroads. Whatever path we choose, the decision we make today will shape the world of tomorrow. And that was the story of migration, a story that divides as much as it unifies, a story that reshapes the face of today's world, and yet is often bypassed in silence as if nothing crucial is happening. But we will not remain silent. We openly speak the truth as it is. The future is not set in stone. It is shaped by each of our decisions, every choice, every question we dare to ask. Every voice and every opinion contributes to the world we leave behind for ourselves and future generations. Thank you for reflecting on this topic with us. Share your thoughts in the comments. They matter. And if our story resonated with you, give us a like and a subscribe so you won't miss future insights on issues that move the world.